Well, once again, good evening, everyone. We're going to be looking at part 3. There is 4 parts to this series. I've tried to slice them up into reasonable portions so that we don't get too much at once. And this time we're going to be looking at the river of life. You know, it's the river that gives life, and that's why it's called the river of life. It's the river that gives life and makes the earth new. And the story of this is in Ezekiel 47. It's really a great story. There's some really neat information here, some great intel that we would never know if the Lord hadn't told us. And what we're going to start doing is doing some matchups, showing that what Ezekiel is talking about is exactly what we're reading about in Revelation chapter 21. It's the same story, different words, and they match up perfectly. And so we're going to do some really neat matchups once again today. Now, we just want to look at what Ezekiel said, and I added Ezekiel 40 verse 1 for one simple reason. The vision began there. And what he said was that in the 5th and 20th year of captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was smitten, in the selfsame day, the hand of the Lord was upon me and brought me thither. So after Ezekiel 40 verse 1, he just started saying, he brought me here, he brought me here, he brought me here. So I just kind of took you back to show you the Lord had taken him by the hand and took him places to show him things in a vision. And he took him right to the future in front of us. We are the generation that's going to see the river of life. We are it. And so this is very, very, very beautiful to me to see what he says is fixing to happen. And it's what I hang on to. And I have a longing for this new earth. You know, getting up every day with the problems we have, the curse we live with, the diseases we live with, the short lives, the deaths, all of these things, the cursed ground, you know, it's all bad. And to think that there's a time coming when everything is perfect. And there's no more bad. Everything that's bad is taken away. And I just long for that time. And so we're on the edge of something. There's going to be judgments of God poured out. And if we've got, it won't be poured out on His children. His children will be protected. But if it's got to be poured out for us to get to this place, this is why I'm ready to get going. I'm ready for the wilderness march. Okay? And so he says, afterward he brought me again to the door of the house. And that's talking about the house of the temple. Again, it's saying that in the next little bit, it is going to be rebuilt. As Israel becomes invincible and the whole world is against it. And this tiny nation keeps rebelling against every little attack against it. Well, he's saying there's going to be a house. And what's going to do? He brought him to the house. It's not even built yet. And he says, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward. And he'll show in a minute that that's the temple. So it's the house of the Lord is what it's saying. And so these waters came out from under the threshold of this temple. And from the forefront of the house stood toward the east, and the waters came down from under from the right side of the house at the south side of what? The altar. He's showing the altars there. This is the house of the Lord. This is the temple that it came out of. Okay, and then he said unto me, these waters issued out toward the east country, and they go down to the desert and go into the sea. So we're just talking about a perpetual river of life that's flowing out of the temple because God's throne is in there. He comes down to this earth, and His throne is in. This water comes out from under His throne, comes out of the house of God. And so what he's saying is that as it goes down into the desert, it just keeps running until it reaches the sea, the rivers, the seas. And look what he says, which being brought forth into the sea, the water shall be healed. So whatever man has done to corrupt, pollute, to destroy what God has made, this river of life just comes forth, making it perfect again and healing the waters. And he says, and it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, which moveth, whithersoever the river shall come, shall live, and there shall be a very great multitude of fish because of these waters. So these waters are actually creating and recreating life. And see, because of the waters, everything that gets to drink of this water shall live. And because of these waters, the seas and the rivers will be filled with multitudes of fish because of those waters. Just like it says there, because of these waters. And because these waters shall come thither, and for they shall be healed in everything that live whither the river cometh. And so we're seeing, that's why it's called the river of life. It is a river giving life to everything that it comes to. See? And so this is the river of life. Now, fish in our future diet. That's a good thing for all of us that like going to Vernon's, right? It's in our future diet. And so in Ezekiel 47, he says, and it shall come to pass that the fisher shall stand upon it from En-Gedi. This is where, this is right off the coast of Israel today. En-Gedi is in Israel. And he says the fishers were on the sea there, even into Engleam, maybe. I don't know how to say that. Enigleum. I didn't even try to look that up to see how it's pronounced. And they shall be a place to spread forth their nets, their fish according to their kinds, as the fish of the great sea, exceedingly many. So Ezekiel was already taken, and after the river of life has gone forth, and the Lord showed him the fishers casting their nets and just bringing in tons of fish. And so he says, the miry places thereof and the marshes thereof shall not be healed, because they're given to salt. In other words, if these waters came to these places, because nothing grows where salt is. So he says, I'm not going to let the waters go to where the salt is, so you'll have salt. And so that's what he's trying to say, that these are given to salt, that the waters won't go there. They'll go to the rivers, the streams, the seas. And these waters will be from the rivers, wherever they will eventually permeate the earth as to everyone's drinking water. So he's saying by the river, and he said, and by the river upon the bank thereof, and on the side, and on that side, shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade. So he's saying there's not going to be a fall season where the leaves turn. It's not going to happen that way. He said there's going to be trees along the banks of these rivers, because the rivers have come forth, that we see a recreation of trees. And what these trees do, they don't turn, the leaves don't turn, and neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. There won't be any bugs or worms smite the tree. There won't be any diseases smite the tree like we have today. And he says, and it shall bring forth new fruit. Because of these waters, according to the month, they'll bring forth a new fruit. And so we'll match this up with Revelation 21, and what we see is, because of these waters, because of these, a tree will bring forth a different fruit every month. Okay, according to its months. And because of these waters, because of those waters that issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf will be for medicine. Okay? And so, if there's something that can make you sick, a bite of the leaf of this tree would take it away. And we know there's no disease or curse or, early death. But there's that thing, where if someone dies at 100, they'll think that person must have been a sinner. And so, we're not saying there's no death at all. We're just saying that it's as perfect as we can get it here. And if there's a mishap of some sort, this leaf is supposed to fix that. Okay? And that's what we're driving at. Now, if we look at verse 13 and 14, we want to look at the borders of Israel in the new earth. It changes completely. He says, ye shall inherit the land according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And so he says, began talking about Joseph having two portions, the descendants of Joseph. And so he's talking about the borders. He said, thus saith the Lord God, this shall be the border whereby ye shall inherit the land according to the 12 tribes of Israel. So this is 15 through 23. He's actually describing where it goes. And it goes from the river Euphrates to the river of Egypt to the seas on every side. It's going to be a really big spot for Israel. And ye shall inherit it, one as well as the other, concerning the which I've lifted up my hand to give it to your fathers. And so what we're saying, that even in Genesis, the Lord told them what they were going to inherit, and they never achieved those borders. But he's saying, I remember that promise, as he said, you're going to inherit it. According to the 12 tribes of Israel, you shall inherit it. One is what concerning the which I lifted up my hand to give it to your fathers. So they're descendants. And so he said, this is what I'm going to give you. They never got it. He's saying, I ain't forgot that. I'm still going to give it to you. So it's a future promise to be fulfilled. And it says, and this land shall fall unto you for an inheritance. So 15 through 23 describes the future borders of Israel. I really didn't want to get out of the mountain, take all that time for all that. I just went online and I found something a Jew kind of pinned up. And so this is what he said Ezekiel 47 says will be their land. So this would be the Euphrates coming down through here. This would be the river of Egypt over here, say, and this would be the cutoff. They would get almost all of this down here, taking up most of what Saudi Arabia and Egypt now. Get it for all this from Turkey all the way up to the sea. A very big block just for Israel. That's what it would look like. Okay? Now, the healing of the old earth, and we're going to start comparing that to Revelation 22. I've been saying 21 a lot, but we're looking at 21 and 22 today on some matchups. I guess chapter 22 must be the river of life. Yes, it is. 22 is the river of life. So I meant 22 a little while ago, but we will be looking at 21 as well. So when we start to look, we just read all this over here from Ezekiel. We're going to start doing some matchups. Well, this is just verse 1 of Revelation 22:1. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. So when we begin to look, we saw that Ezekiel showed that these waters, and there it is, there's water. These waters issued from under the threshold of the house. We see here that this is proceeding from the throne coming out of the house. And so we're combining the information to get the intel here. And when we come down through here, he talked about out from under the threshold, proceeding from the throne. Then down here, he calls it, what he says of the river, everything that liveth, which moveth whithersoever the rivers shall come, shall live. And so we got these ideals of this river giving life. So it's called the river of life. See? And so it's just a matchup, different words. See? And it'll continue to do this as we continue to do the matchups. So we saw in Ezekiel 47 verse 12, and by the river upon the bank thereof, this side and that side, and so on either side of the river, different way of saying it, same thing, shall grow all trees for meat, where there was the tree of life. So he's talking about a particular tree growing there along the river, but we find there are a lot of trees growing along the river. And so he says, whose leaves shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. There won't be any diseases or curses to destroy the fruit, or any worm to smite it. And it shall bring forth new fruit according to their months, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. Different fruit every month. So same exact information, saying it different. You put them together, you get a complete picture. You know what he meant by bring forth fruit according to his months. He's saying a different fruit every month. 12 months, 12 fruits. See? And so, at the end of the millennium, when God begins to withdraw his presence, some fool will get raised up that never knew all this stuff and say, you really think a tree used to just bear one fruit? You know, I mean, this is really what we're looking at. It's the attitude of today. People look at the way the earth was before the flood, and they don't believe any of that. They don't believe that people used to live that long, because it's not the new normal. Say, but there's coming a new normal, and it's not going to be anything like what we have today. And he says, because these waters that issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat. And so we can see I think I did a wrong matchup here.
I see it.
What is it?
The leaves and trees for the healing of the nations matching the...
Yeah, this is a matchup here. And the leaf thereof for medicine, the leaves, and it says here, the leaves of the tree which for the healing of the nation. So this is what he means, is the leaves will heal the nations. Whatever it is that they've had wrong with them, you know, it would be for healing. I was looking at why I had no more curse with this. And it probably should have been with this, that this where nothing's going to consume the fruit of it, and we see there's no more curse. I don't know why that dropped down there, and I matched that wrong, but I made a mistake there. Because of the waters that issued out of the sanctuary, the giving life, there's no more curse. Maybe I was just thinking in terms of when I saw this river of life kind of changes this. The curse, first of the curse is death, right? Well, that's taken away by the river of life. The death is taken away. And so maybe that's what I was thinking, but I also see where it should match up here. I should have had an error here as well, because now, you know, we plant very goodly trees in our yard to have fruit. And, you know, we got to spray them for disease. We got to spray them for bugs. We got to, just to get fruit off of it. You practically poison your food to be able to get the fruit. And so that's not going to be necessary anymore. he's saying that the fruit will not be consumed by anything, not disease or worm shall smite it. And there'll be no more curse. That will be taken away as well. But anyway, the matchups are perfect. It's just said different in each place. And this is probably one of my favorite slides of that, with the exception of me trying to figure out why I'd match this. But it's saying the same thing all the way down. Ezekiel 47 is talking about the river of life when it flows on this earth and makes it new. Okay? Now, Zechariah actually confirms the river of life flows from God to the earth at the second coming. And this is what's so crazy about where we came from, where nobody believed that the Lord was fixing to come back before the millennium, is everywhere that it appears in the Scriptures, it talks about the Lord coming and something very fantastic happening, like a river of life flowing down to the earth to heal it. And so Zechariah actually picks this up at Armageddon. And he says in Zechariah 14, verse 5 through 9, he says, "And ye shall flee, and the Lord my God shall come." So this is Jesus coming back. "The Lord will come, and all the saints with thee." You know, some translations will have all the hosts of heaven or the angels coming with him. They're coming with him as Jerusalem is getting attacked by its enemies. "And it shall come to pass in that day," so we're talking about in this very day the Lord comes, "that the light shall be not clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord." That's the day the Lord was talking about, that the Father knows what day I'm coming. He said, "This one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that at the evening time it shall be light." And I think what he's saying is, even though a lot of people for a lot of years won't understand what these verses mean, when it happens, they'll say, "Oh, that's what you meant," right? Okay, and so everything will be clear in the evening when it transpires. And so it says, "And it shall be in that day that living water shall go forth from Jerusalem." He's calling it just like Ezekiel did, just like John did. In John's vision, he's saying these waters are coming out from Jerusalem, out from under the threshold, from the throne of God. These living waters are going to go out. And even Zechariah was told to call them living waters. John was told to call it a river of life. And Ezekiel was told that it was a river that gives life. And so this is the same thing being told by all the prophets. And then finally down here he says that it'll come out and go two ways. Half of it toward the former sea, half of it towards the hinder sea. We see these waters are hitting the rivers and heading toward the seas and healing everything as it goes. Okay? And so he says, "In summer and winter shall it be." These waters going forth until the whole earth is permeated. Okay? And he says, and the Lord shall be king over the whole earth in that day." And I look at that and I just say, wow. You know, we got Jesus coming with all of his hosts, becoming king of the whole earth that day. And these waters pouring out, and we still got people that say that, no, he's not really coming. Can you imagine getting any of this done without coming? You know, it just doesn't make any sense. And so there's a real terrible blindness in some of these doctrines that are going on that just take away the understanding of people, you know. And so we go over to Revelation 22 verse 1, and he said he showed him the pure river of life. You know, we saw here, "It shall be in that day, living water shall go forth from Jerusalem." John said he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God. We saw here the Lord was coming. Well, how in the world are you going to have the throne of God in the temple without coming? It doesn't make any sense. And so he's coming. The throne of God will be there in the temple, and the waters will come out from the throne. As it says here, the living waters will come out. He says in Ezekiel 47 verse 1, that after he brought me again into the door of the house, and behold, waters issued from under the threshold of the house eastward. So they're saying the same thing. We're just combining these things together now. And then also in Ezekiel 47:1, he says, "And the waters came from the right side of the house at the south side of the altar." So they're all saying the same thing. It's coming from Jerusalem, from the temple. That's where the waters are coming from. And so we just put them all together, Zechariah, John, and Ezekiel, and just showed us all the same story. Now, let's look at the new earth of the Old Testament, Isaiah 60. This is another one. And because he's telling Israel, the Hebrews, that something is coming for the Hebrews at the end of this age, the Christian age. And he doesn't reveal that it's in the new earth to the last few verses. And I thought this was great, as I begin to do this. And we'll do another matchup at the end of this, at the end of Isaiah 60. So light is coming to Israel, and the hatred will be turned away. We see the whole world starting to hate Israel. The anti-Semitism is on the rise. And all the countries of the world are against them. I mean, so you got like Canada trying to be their friend right now. And so it's really crazy how all this is going against Israel. And they're siding up with people that are doing very terrible things to their citizens and to everyone that don't believe like them. And Israel's not doing nothing to nobody. And so it's a demonic forces causing a hatred towards something that is good. Okay? And so he says to the people, "Arise, shine, for the light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee." And so what I believe he's talking about is that when the whole world is against Israel, and they come against Israel, and the Lord shows up to defend them, anyone that has been deceived that liking Israel is a bad thing, they're going to see that that was wrong now, see? And we're talking about survivors, because the wicked won't be around, okay? And so he says that, "For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth." That's where we are now. This gross darkness covering the people and the earth. This is the time going into these last days. This is why things are so evil today. And if you just look through the news site, just look. I mean, that's what I do in the morning. I get up with my coffee, just look at the news. I subscribe to everything because it's right there in front of you on Facebook, Just look at all the news headlines. If I see something I think is prophetic, I open it and I read it. Well, that's what I'm seeing. I just shake my head. I just can't believe how dark things are. And so he's describing the time coming into this, and he's talking about the gospel getting in, permeating into Israel. Some of that's happening with the Messianic Jews today. And he said this is gross darkness that's happening, the gross darkness to people and the earth. And he says, "But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee." And so both in the ministry to Israel before the coming and at the coming when the Lord defends them. And then he says, "And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and the kings to the brightness of thy rising." Now that's not going to happen until they try to attack them and it fails. Okay? But there's going to be a turnaround to where the Gentiles are going to come to their light, the kings to the brightness of thy rising. Because the Lord defends them, then they must be all right. So everybody has a change of attitude. So the turning will be a result of the Lord's defense against Israel. Now, same chapter, verses 10 through 13, we want to look at the preeminence of Israel being restored in the earth. And he says, "And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls." Okay, so instead of having to put a fence around this little bitty tiny country and defend it, no, the strangers will come build up their walls, and kings shall minister to thee. What he's saying is that the countries, the kings of the countries left in the world after the coming of the Lord, they will be coming to Israel to minister to their needs. They will be giving to that country to provide for them. So he's saying these sons of strangers are going to build their walls, the kings shall minister to them. And for in my wrath, he says, I smote thee. So there was a time for Israel to be punished. There was a time for them also to favor them. But in my favor have I had mercy upon thee. So Israel been through some hard times. But now it's time to favor them. It's time to bring them and graft them back into his tree. And so he says, verse 11, "Therefore thy gates shall be open continually, and they shall not be shut day or night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, that their kings may be brought." And so he's saying there won't be no need to shut the gate. You're going to have to leave that open so all these other kings can come do homage, see? And so that's where we're going in the future, is that they will come and honor Israel, and they will have to report to honor. You know, and Zechariah said the same thing, that every year they got to send emissaries to the Feast of Tabernacles. He says if someone don't come, they're not getting any rain. See? And so there will be punishment upon those people that don't come to Israel for that Feast of Tabernacles. And so he says, "You leave the gates open so the kings may be brought, for the nation and the kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, and those nations shall be utterly wasted." And so those that, if there's a nation that can arise in the millennial time that wants to have a bad attitude toward Israel, he said they're going to be utterly wasted. They won't be permitted to stay a nation. Okay? So this is the Lord's doing. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, and the fir tree, and the pine tree, and the box together, to beautify the places of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. So he's talking about making this both the sanctuary and the place of his feet glorious. Okay, now, verse 14 through 16, we want to look at Israel in the new earth. And he says, the sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending knee unto thee. So all them people that hate him now, if there's any survivors, some of them are Christians being warped and perverted. Maybe some of those are allowed to come into this time, I don't know. But the sons of those that afflicted Israel will come bending their knee to those at Israel in that day. And they that despise thee shall bow themselves down to the soles of thy feet. And they shall call thee the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. So you see what's happened is the Lord himself has come and defended Israel, put his blessing upon that, called them his people. Now the rest have to get in line with that. For whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, that's the way it is now. So that no man went through thee, I will make thee eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. So this is all going to be a big turnaround. So thou shalt also suck the milk of Gentiles, and shalt suck the breast of kings. And again, it's a metaphor of them ministering to their needs, providing for the needs of Israel in the future. And thou shalt know that I am thy Savior. Thou shalt know that I, the Lord, am thy Savior, thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. So he's not forgot that he's going to bring them in. He will bring them in to his church. In verse 18 through 20, he begins to talk about New Jerusalem in the new earth. You know, there is going to be a New Jerusalem in the new earth. He says, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders. But thou shalt call thy wall salvation, and thy gates praise. The sun shall be no more thy light by day, neither brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, but the Lord shall be unto thee everlasting light. So he's revealing that this is a new time. It's not in this age that we're in. It's the future age, the millennial age. The Lord will be the everlasting light, and God thy glory. Thy sun shall no more go down, neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. So using the same words of the new earth that John used to describe it, Isaiah revealed the time to which he's referring, that it's the millennial time. Now, let's just do a comparison then of Revelation 21, Isaiah 60. We're just looking at this New Jerusalem and the new earth. Do some matchups. I want to read to you a little bit, refresh you what Revelation 21 was. I even had that confused a minute ago, 21 and 22. And so let's just look what he says. John said, I saw the new heaven, the new earth, for the first heaven, the first earth were passed away. No more. There's a whole new atmosphere, there's a whole new planet, and even we are made new. Okay? He says there was no more sea. He says, I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Now, we'll get to that in the next study a little more deeper. But what I want to show you right now is there is a brand new earth, okay? A new atmosphere, a first heaven. It's like it was in the days of Adam and Eve. And this New Jerusalem, it's coming down from God to here, to earth. We're not going up to it. It's coming here. It's coming down from God out of heaven to us. And he heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. He's saying, I'm coming with it. Okay? The tabernacle of God being with men, that's God's dwelling place being with you. Okay? And he says, and he will dwell with them. He wants you to understand that he's coming down with the city and he's going to dwell with mankind like he did with Adam and Eve. And they shall be his people. And God himself shall be with them and be their God. You need to hear that. Boy, I'm telling you, a blindness, a supernatural blindness to keep people to see what's coming. These are the words of God. This is what John was told. And God himself is going to wipe away all the tears from their eyes, and they shall be no more death, no more sorrow, no crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for former things are passed away. And see, they always ignore all of this about it coming down to us and say, well, that's just heaven. You're going to heaven, he's going to wipe away your tears. That's not what this is. This is the new earth. And what's up there in heaven is coming here. Heaven's coming here. It's coming down. We're not going up. It's coming down. Okay? And so he says, and he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. That includes you. Everything's being made new. And he said unto me, Write, because these words are true and faithful. You can count on these words. He wants you to know that these words are true and faithful. They're not a misunderstanding. What John said, you can bank it. Okay? Now, let's start with our matchups in Revelation 21 and verse 60. You know, in Revelation 21, we saw that, in Isaiah 60, we saw the sun shall be no more thy light. Well, in Revelation 21, verse 23, the city had no need of the sun. So he addresses the sun. The sun shall be no more thy light. Something has replaced the light of the sun. Neither shall the moon to shine in it, neither for the brightness shall the moon give light. So he's saying because the brightness of coming off of God is so bright, then you won't be able to see the sunlight or the moonlight. It's not going to be the source of light. God will cause the moon and sun to cast a shadow. See, and so he's saying that this sunlight, moonlight will not be needed anymore because of the light coming off of God. And he says even, the glory of God did lighten it. It is the glory coming off of God that lightens the earth. And the Lamb is the light thereof. The Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light. He's saying the same thing. Now, you know, if you was a Jew several thousand years ago, looking at Isaiah, you might not figure all this out. But you let the Lord come show you and use some different words and you do some matchups, you know exactly what He's talking about. And that's why we're looking at Old and New Testament and doing matchups. We are saying this is the same time, there's a new earth and a new Jerusalem, that God is coming here, and His light, His glory is going to be coming off of Him so bright that you will not get any use of the moon and the sun. Okay, and that's what we're saying. All right. Now, Revelation 21 verse 24 says, And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it. So only the people that are saved get to come into the new earth. And he says that they're going to walk in the light of it. Now what did he say? The Gentiles shall come to the light. That's what he said in Isaiah 60 verse 3. So he's addressing the nations. The Gentiles come in the light. The nations walking in the light. Same thing. But he also addresses the kings. And the kings of the earth we saw right here, and the kings to the brightness of thy rising. He's addressing the Gentiles and the kings of the earth, just like he did in Revelation. The nations are going to walk in the light. The nations that are saved will walk in the light of this city, coming down upon the city. And he says, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor to it. The kings of the earth are bringing their honor. So that's what he meant by these statements. He says, Arise and shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of God the Lord is risen upon thee. Now we've got kings and nations bringing glory and honor to Israel because the Lord has risen upon them, showed favor to them. And he says, The Lord shall arise upon thee, and His glory shall be seen upon thee. He's talking specifically to Israel. And so because the Lord has risen, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon them, and the Lord is His glory shall be seen upon them, then it's because of that the kings and the Gentiles are bringing their glory and honor to it, doing obeisance to it. Okay, that's what's causing that. And so it's the same matchup. It's the same story, different words, from Isaiah 60 to Revelation 21, showing it's a time yet future. Now, in Revelation 21, he said, The gates of it shall not be shut, not at all, not by day, and there shall be no night there. Isaiah 60 said the same thing. The gates shall be open continually. And the reason is so that the force of the Gentiles and the kings may be brought. Things are changing. This is a place that I want to live. A good place. Okay? In verse 26 of Revelation 21, he says, And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. In verse 16 of Isaiah 60, he says, Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shall suck the breast of kings, showing that this is what they're doing, that they're ministering unto them. And he says, And thou shalt know that I am the Lord thy Savior. Preeminence of Israel is being restored in the earth. again to be a light in the millennial time. Now, about New Jerusalem. In Revelation 21, he says, there shall be no night there, and they shall need no candle, neither the light of the sun. And we saw in verse 19, the sun shall be no more thy light by day. And he says, for the Lord thy God giveth them light. The Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, right out of Isaiah 60, verse 19. It's the same words from Revelation 22 to Isaiah 60. And what we have been picking these up and matching them up, and we got more matchups to do. The Old Testament prophets had a lot to say about the new earth. A lot to say. And it's all in Revelation 21, 22, the matchups we're doing. That's where they're coming from. Okay? And so also he says, and they shall reign forever and ever. And so, I mean, this is what he's saying, you know, about this last age. There's a big change coming for the faithful. A change worth sticking out whatever's between us and it. And that's my message to y'all. Whatever's coming that's bad, it's worth sticking it out for these 42 months to get here. It's worth it. Okay? All right. New earth that is coming. Okay? New Jerusalem coming with him and their new name being for his people. This is all part of the package. There's a new earth that's going to transpire at the second coming of Christ. Jerusalem is going to come down and he's going to give us a new name. All of that's part of the package. Now, one of the things I want to do is I want to do a couple of matchups just from Revelation. In Revelation chapter 3, he says, I come quickly. You know, he's trying to say this is all going to take place after my coming. And so he says, hold fast thou which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God. He's going to take leaders from those overcomers. And he said, he shall no more go out, and I will write upon him the new name, the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem. So he's getting this name, this new name. And he says this New Jerusalem is something that's coming down out of heaven from my God, just like we read before in Revelation 22. It's coming down to us, and I will write upon him my new name. That's where I keep getting that. So there's several elements to this. And if we were to just take another verse from Revelation 21 that we've been studying, man, look at the matchups. Isn't that crazy? When he says in Revelation 3, verse 11, he says, I come quickly. Look how many times he actually says that he's coming. He says here, the tabernacle of God is with men. He will dwell with them. And finally, God himself will be with them. 3 times he says, I'm coming in different ways. It's a perfect matchup. So when we do this matchup, and we know it's the same time because they're both talking about New Jerusalem coming down, when we do this matchup, we know that this is not some kind of spiritualized coming where he comes and nobody sees him. That's not what this is. When he says, I'm coming, he means that his dwelling place is with us now. He's going to dwell with us, and he himself will be with us. That's what he means by that. And so he begins to talk about, as we read here, him that overcometh, he make a pillar and write upon him the new name. But then he says the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem. And so he's talking about seeing New Jerusalem coming down. And he says, which cometh them out of heaven from my God, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as the bride adorned for her husband. It's the same thing. It's the same message, both places. Well, that's all I'm going to share with you today. Now listen, next time we're going to do some matchups from Isaiah